If you really had to get one thing first, get a tree identification book. I mean, the forester is going to be constantly talking about tree species because all you're doing in management is really manipulating the vegetation. You want to keep the good, and what's good is what you enjoy, and it could be a mass-producing tree that all the turkeys and deer come into in the fall. It could be walnut trees down there. But if you can't identify what we're talking about, and you're going to go out and do timber stand improvement, and you're supposed to kill the undesirables, the elms, the honey locusts, these type of things, and you don't know what they really look like, to me, maybe a good aerial photo and a good tree identification book is going to help set the stage for what you need to do.
As Scott said, knowing what you have so you can begin to make plans as to how you will manage your woodlands starts with basic tree identification. Identifying a tree is like good detective work. You need to pay attention and look for clues. Some clues are obvious. Others are more subtle. There are 3 excellent references that should definitely be a part of a woodland owner's home library. The first is Trees of Missouri, published by the University of Missouri. The other 2 are 50 Common Trees of Missouri and Missouri's Oaks and Hickories. Both are published by the Missouri Department of Conservation and are available at most field offices. 2 simple tools that will help you in identifying trees are a good hand lens and a sharp pocket knife. The hand lens will come in handy examining bud and twig details. Your pocket knife will be indispensable for checking out distinguishing characteristics inside the twig or under the bark. We'll first look at various clues that may be at our disposal. Then we'll show you how to identify a few of the more common trees you are likely to encounter on your property. Missouri is literally a botanical melting pot, lying at the westernmost range of species to our east, the southernmost range of species to our north, and the northernmost range of species to our south. For the most part, the species we will describe can be found in almost every county in Missouri. Where we introduce a regional species, we'll be sure to point that out. The most common clues a tree provides are arrangement, leaves, twigs and buds, fruits and seed, bark, and location on the landscape. Arrangement refers to how leaves are positioned on the twig. As branches are modified leaves, arrangement can also be deduced from how smaller branches are positioned on larger branches. Opposite arrangement is used to describe leaves that emerge on opposite sides of the twig, as shown here in the case of sugar maple. A commonly used acronym to narrow the field of suspects exhibiting opposite arrangement is MAD-BUCK. It stands for maple, ash, dogwood, and buckeye. Alternate arrangement is where the leaves emerge on alternating sides of the twig, as illustrated here with eastern redbud. The leaves do not really alternate from side to side on the twig, but are arranged around the stem, much like the steps of a spiral staircase. Lastly, there is whorled arrangement, where 3 or more leaves emerge from the same point on the twig. The only tree species found in Missouri exhibiting this arrangement pattern are the northern and southern catalpa trees. Simple leaves have a single leaf blade. Compound leaves have multiple leaf blades arranged in various patterns. The edges of the leaf can be smooth, toothed, or lobed. Leaves can also be described by their overall dimensions. Circular, elliptical, or oval are just a few of the descriptions that can be given to a leaf's outline. There are many unique adjectives to describe both the tip and base of the leaf. The leaf surface may be smooth or rough. Lastly, the color of the upper and lower leaf surfaces might yield a helpful clue. Leaves are often the first clue that the beginner will lean on, but don't rely solely on leaves to identify your trees. Leaves of young trees can look quite different from the leaves of older trees. The same can be said for leaves growing on lower branches compared to those growing on the top of the tree. Also, what happens when the leaves fall off the tree? More reliable clues are twig and bud characteristics. After the first frost, twig and bud colors are set and remain fixed until spring bud break. Twig and bud traits cannot be used from spring through early fall because of the active growth of the trees. Terminal buds are often bigger than the lateral buds located along the stem and are easier to observe noticeable clues such as size, presence or absence of the bud scales, and their color. The terminal bud of the mockernut hickory has often been described as having a Dairy Queen cone shape with silvery white inner bud scales. Sometimes a tree has characteristic flower buds, as is the case with the pagoda-shaped flower bud of the flowering dogwood. The leaf scar is where the leaf attaches to the twig. Its shape will sometimes aid in identification. A green ash leaf scar is shield-shaped, like the heel of a shoe, and the bud rests atop the straight edge of the shield. You can also deduce arrangement by looking at how the leaf scars are positioned along the twig. Twig stoutness can be determined by examining twigs on the ground beneath the canopy of the tree in question. With experience, you can also deduce stoutness by looking at twig silhouettes against a gray winter sky. Whether they are acorns, nuts, samaras, pods, or berries, fruits and seeds are other good winter traits that, when used in conjunction with twig characteristics, will help you nail down a tree's identification. The last two types of clues to aid in tree identification are perhaps the most useful to the professional forester, but the most frustrating to someone just learning the ropes. We are referring to bark and location in the landscape. Bark patterns can be described as papery, exfoliating, fissured, warty, or fibrous, just to name a few. Outer bark color, as well as inner bark color in some species, can be helpful. There can be differences between young and old bark on the same tree. Lastly, some special features, such as horizontal lenticels of black cherry twigs, can be carried all the way to the bark ridges on the mature trunk. Location in the landscape can help you narrow your list of suspects. While there are no absolutes, tree species tend to favor particular environments. Bottomlands tend to have deeper, more fertile soil compared to upland areas. North and east-facing slopes tend to be cooler and moister than south and west-facing hillsides.